SS speak up, FF freak. Marcus sneered, his voice dripping with mock sympathy as he cornered Akira near the lockers. Or Emma, maybe you CC can't? The group behind him erupted in cruel laughter, their voices echoing off the metal doors like a symphony of cruelty. Akira Tanaka's face burned crimson, her flame-red hair seeming to catch fire under the harsh fluorescent lights. The stutter that had plagued her since childhood felt like a cage around her voice, trapping every word she desperately wanted to say. She clutched her books tighter, knuckles white against the worn covers, as tears threatened to spill from her green eyes. Look at her face. It matches her ugly hair. Jessica chimed in, her perfectly manicured finger pointing accusingly. No wonder she can't talk right. Even her mouth is defective. The daily torment had become as routine as breathing. What started as whispered comments 3 months ago had escalated into a full-scale campaign of psychological warfare. Every morning, Akira would steel herself for the gauntlet of whispers, the exaggerated stuttering that followed her down hallways, the accidental shoulder checks that sent her books flying. Her red hair, inherited from her Irish grandmother, made her stand out like a beacon for cruelty in their predominantly dark-haired school. It began innocently enough, a few snickers when she struggled to answer a question in English class. But Marcus had noticed her vulnerability like a predator scenting wounded prey. He started mimicking her speech patterns, drawing out every stumbled syllable with theatrical precision. Soon, Jessica joined in, and then others followed like moths to a flame of cruelty. The harassment evolved with calculated precision. First came the verbal taunts, then the deliberate exclusion from group activities. They would form circles around her desk, whispering just loud enough for her to hear fragments. Firehead freak, broken mouth. Why doesn't she just stay home? The teachers, overwhelmed with their own responsibilities, either didn't notice or chose to ignore the subtle torture happening under their noses. By the second month, the bullying had become physical. Accidental trips in the hallway that sent her sprawling, books scattered like autumn leaves, shoulders slammed into hers with enough force to leave bruises. Her locker was decorated with cruel drawings, a red-haired stick figure with a giant X over its mouth, accompanied by words too painful to repeat. The psychological assault was even more devastating. They had learned her class schedule, positioning themselves strategically to maximize her discomfort. In the cafeteria, they would start fake conversations about speech therapy and special education programs whenever she walked by. They created elaborate charades, pretending to interpret her words for each other as if she were speaking a foreign language. What did she say? Marcus would ask with mock confusion after Akira attempted to order lunch. I think she wants FFF food, Jessica would reply, her voice dripping with false concern. The isolation was suffocating. Former friends began avoiding her, afraid of becoming targets themselves. She ate lunch alone, did projects alone, walked to classes alone. The red hair that had once been her grandmother's pride and joy now felt like a curse, making her impossible to hide in crowds. At home, Akira would lock herself in her room, staring at her reflection and practicing sentences over and over. My name is Akira, she'd whisper to the mirror, watching her mouth betray her with each stumbled syllable. Her mother would find her there sometimes, tears streaming down freckled cheeks, and wrap her in warm embraces that felt like the only safe harbor in a storm of adolescent brutality. The breaking point came on a Tuesday that felt like any other. Akira sat alone at lunch, as usual, when Marcus and his crew approached with predatory grins. This time, they didn't stop at words. Marcus grabbed her lunch tray and dumped it over her head, the cold soup soaking through her hair and staining her white shirt. Oops, he said with mock concern. Ella, looks like you need a BB bath. Red. The cafeteria fell silent, hundreds of eyes watching as humiliation dripped from her hair. Something fractured inside Akira that day, but it wasn't her spirit. It was her acceptance of helplessness. Something fractured inside Akira that day, but it wasn't her spirit. It was her acceptance of helplessness. Walking home with soup still clinging to her hair, she passed a small dojo tucked between a dry cleaner and a convenience store. Through the window, she saw figures in white uniforms moving with precision and grace, their bamboo swords cutting through the air like extensions of their souls. The word Kendo was painted on the glass in elegant script. Without fully understanding why, Akira pushed open the door and stepped inside. The space smelled of polished wood and discipline, a stark contrast to the chaos of her school life. An elderly Japanese man with kind eyes noticed her disheveled state and soup-stained clothes. "You look like someone who needs to find her voice," Sensei Yamamoto said gently, his own words carrying the weight of decades of wisdom. "I don't have one," Akira whispered, her green eyes downcast. "Then we will forge one together," he replied, extending a practiced sword toward her. "But first, you must learn that strength comes not from speaking loudly, but from standing firmly." The transformation didn't happen overnight. Akira's first weeks at the dojo were humbling in ways she hadn't expected. Her body, weakened by months of stress and poor eating habits, struggled with the basic stances. Her mind, accustomed to constant anxiety, fought against the meditative focus that Kendo demanded. But Sensei Yamamoto was patient, treating her stutter not as a disability but as a rhythm that needed to be understood and worked with. "Kendo is not about perfection," he explained during one particularly frustrating session where Akira had fumbled through every kata. "It is about sincerity. Your stutter teaches you to choose your words carefully. This is wisdom that others lack." Each afternoon, she would trade her school clothes for the traditional hakama and gi, feeling the weight of the bamboo sword, the shurnai, in her hands like a prayer made tangible. The first time she held it properly, something shifted inside her chest. It wasn't just a weapon. It was a tool for building character, for finding balance between mind and body. The dojo became her sanctuary. Here, her red hair wasn't a target, but simply another unique feature among the diverse group of students. There was Miguel, a shy boy who spoke with an accent that made him self-conscious. There was Sarah, who had cerebral palsy but moved with surprising grace when she found her center. There was David, a former gang member seeking discipline and purpose. In this space, differences weren't weaknesses to be exploited. They were strengths to be honored. Sensei Yamamoto taught her that Kendo was built on 4 principles: respect, discipline, courage, and honor. "These are not just rules for sword fighting," he would say. "These are rules for living." The physical training was grueling. Hours of footwork drills until her legs burned. Endless repetition of basic cuts until her shoulders ached. But with each session, Akira felt something building inside her that the bullies could never touch. Her posture straightened. Her breathing became more controlled. The nervous energy that had plagued her for months transformed into focused determination. "Kendo teaches us kikentai ichi," the sensei explained during one particularly intense session. "Spirit, sword, and body as one. When you achieve this unity, nothing can shake you." The mental discipline proved even more challenging than the physical. Kendo required complete presence, no room for the anxious thoughts that had consumed her for months. During meditation sessions, she learned to observe her fears without being controlled by them. The constant internal chatter about what others thought of her began to quiet. "Your stutter is not your enemy," Sensei Yamamoto told her one evening as they sat in seiza position after practice. "It forces you to be present with each word, to speak with intention rather than habit. This is a gift that most people never develop." Slowly, Akira began to understand. Her speech impediment had taught her to listen more carefully, to think before speaking, to value words rather than waste them. These weren't weaknesses, they were the foundations of wisdom. The transformation extended beyond the dojo walls. At school, she began to notice the bullies' words bouncing off her like raindrops on stone. Their cruelty seemed smaller somehow, less significant than the discipline she was building within herself. When Marcus would mock her speech, she would breathe deeply and remember the feeling of the sword in her hands, the way it demanded presence and precision. Her grades improved as her confidence grew. Teachers began to notice her increased participation in class. She still stuttered, but now she spoke with authority, her words carrying weight despite their imperfect delivery. The red hair that had been her curse began to feel like a crown of fire, uniquely hers and beautiful in its defiance of conformity. 3 months into her training, Akira achieved her first breakthrough. During a particularly intense sparring session, she found herself in perfect synchronization, spirit, sword, and body moving as one fluid entity. The moment lasted only seconds, but it changed everything. She had touched something unshakable within herself. "You are ready?" Sensei Yamamoto said simply, and Akira knew he wasn't just talking about her kendo technique. The confrontation that would change everything came during a particularly vicious episode in the gymnasium. Akira was changing for PE when Jessica and her followers cornered her, their voices sharp with malice. "Still can't talk, right? Can you, Carrot Top?" Jessica sneered. "Maybe we should help you practice." They began pushing her back and forth between them, a cruel game of human pinball. But this time, Akira didn't cower. She planted her feet firmly in the kami stance, remembering every lesson about balance and center. Her breathing remained steady, her mind clear despite the chaos around her. "Come on, FF freak, say something," Marcus taunted, stepping closer with his usual predatory grin. "Or are you too STST stupid?" When Marcus raised his hand as if to strike her, something inside Akira moved with the fluid precision of her training. Time seemed to slow as months of discipline crystallized into a single moment of perfect clarity. In one smooth motion, she caught his wrist and twisted, using his own momentum against him with the gentle but unbreakable control she had learned in countless hours of practice. Marcus found himself face down on the gymnasium floor, his arm locked behind his back with a technique that caused no pain but offered no escape. The entire confrontation took less than 3 seconds, executed with the quiet efficiency of true martial arts mastery. "The next time you want to hurt someone," Akira said, her voice steady and clear despite the slight stutter that remained, "remember that some of us have learned to defend ourselves." She released him and stood, her red hair catching the light like flames. The bullies stared at her in shock, seeing for the first time not a victim, but a warrior who had chosen mercy over revenge. Jessica stepped back instinctively, her usual confidence evaporating in the face of Akira's calm authority. "This isn't over," Marcus muttered, scrambling to his feet and trying to salvage his wounded pride. Akira looked at him with the same serene expression she wore during meditation. "Yes, it is," she replied simply. "It's been over for a long time. You just didn't know it yet." Word of the incident spread through the school like wildfire. But rather than fear, Akira noticed something else in her classmates' eyes. Respect. The girl who had been mocked for her differences had revealed a strength that came from embracing those very differences. Students who had never spoken to her before began nodding respectfully in the hallways. Marcus never bothered her again. In fact, he began avoiding her entirely, and when they did pass in the halls, he would nod with grudging respect. The humiliation of being controlled so effortlessly by someone he had tormented had shattered his inflated ego. Jessica found other targets for her cruelty, though she seemed to have lost some of her enthusiasm for it. The most surprising change came from the bystanders. Students who had watched silently for months began speaking up when they witnessed bullying. Sarah Chun, who had been too afraid to intervene before, now stood between bullies and their targets. "Leave them alone," she would say with quiet firmness, and somehow they did. Akira's transformation became legendary, but not in the way she had expected. Rather than being feared as some kind of vigilante, she was sought out by other students who felt powerless. They came to her quietly, asking where she had learned to be so strong, so centered. She would smile and give them Sensei Yamamoto's address, knowing that the dojo had room for more students seeking to transform their pain into purpose. The red hair that had once made her a target became her signature, a flame that lit the way for others who felt different, who struggled with their own challenges, who needed to see that being unique was not a weakness but a gift waiting to be unwrapped. Her stutter, too, became less of a burden and more of a reminder that perfection was not the goal, authenticity was.